Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Lovely chat already happening here on the side. So that is just wonderful to get the energy going for this evening. You're all incredibly welcome to the first Building Emotional Resilience webinar. I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Pat Divilly. So welcome, Pat, and thank you for being here with me. I'm really delighted.
Thanks, Fee. It's great to get to do this. And as you say, it's great to see so many people chatting in the chat box. So hopefully we get lots of that tonight.
Exactly. That's what we want to encourage. It really, really is. So, what I would like to do before we start, and something that I think is really helpful before any of us do anything important, whether that's in our professional life, our personal life, is we're going to pause before we begin. And we're going to take 3 deep breaths. And that's just simply to bring us all together and to let go of the day and everything else that happened before this moment. So I encourage you to make yourself comfortable, and we're going to take belly breaths because that's what will really help to calm our whole nervous systems. I'm speaking to myself probably more than anyone to calm my nervous system. And we're going to simply just breathe into the belly as deep as we can and then exhale slowly. So for one, breathing in deep, slow, long exhale. For two, and for three. Just keeping your eyes closed for a moment, I encourage and I invite you all to bring your full self to this evening. So we welcome all the different parts of you. If there's anxiety, if there's fear, if there's sadness, if there's joy, if there's gratitude, if there's love, if there's doubt, each and every part of you is welcome here this evening. In order for you to truly benefit, I encourage you to engage in terms of the chat, in terms of the journaling, and to really bring your full self and to let go of the day. So we're going to open our eyes and reconnect. So, just very simply, what that does is it focuses our mind and brings us all where we need to be, which is 100% present and here together. So, I want to start off just by defining what is emotional resilience. And this is, as I said, the first in the webinar series. So, I think when we're talking about anything emotional, it's very subjective in terms of how we see it. So, the best way that I can define it, let's say, is through my own experience and what I feel emotional resilience is. And for me, it's something that I would describe as having an unshakable core. And those words are not mine. I actually learned them for or heard them first from Dr. Rick Hansen. I was training with him a number of years ago. And he spoke about this idea of having an unshakable core. And I thought, my goodness, that just sounds like something so appealing and so strong. And essentially, it is. It's a feeling that can be quite intangible and also something that, for me personally, comes through a multitude of different practices. So, for example, it is a combination of my physical, my mental, my emotional, and also my spiritual well being. So, when all of those are given the care and the love that they need, that is when I feel that emotional resilience. And essentially, it's, in my own words, a kind of sacred space that I know that no matter what comes my way, no matter what challenges life is going to present, I know deep down I'm going to be able to handle them. So that's when life is, let's say, throwing challenges at us. But the flip side of it, which is a little bit like what we're going to talk about, the dark and the golden shadow. So let's say the golden part of emotional resilience is the ability to actually thrive and to flourish and to really have the energy to contribute to the world and to make it just that little bit brighter in whatever way that you can. So that's how I would view that's what emotional resilience is to me. But we're going to explore what it is to each and every one of us because it is going to be somewhat different. I want to talk about this evening. I think that, in terms of the shadow, I think that is the bedrock in many ways of emotional resilience. And that's why it's great that it's the first in the series, because when we can embrace our shadow, understand it, we're really in a position then to start to move forward, to self-actualize and to flourish, because like I said, we're bringing all the parts of ourselves on that journey and not having to fear anything that's within inside ourselves. So this evening, as you've already been doing, the engagement is great. Please do keep it up. You can ask questions, but if you wouldn't mind, put them in the ask question bottom at the bottom of the page there rather than the chat, and you can upvote any question that you think is relevant to you. So we'll get to those questions. We're also running a competition on Instagram. So both myself and Pat are going to give our online programs. You can win access to my online program, The Positive Habit. If you've already done that course, which many of you may have done, you are welcome then to the Sustaining program. And Pat is going to donate a €100 voucher for a future online course, which is very exciting. So all you need to do is basically take a screen grab of the webinar and then just tag myself and Pat, and 3 people will be selected. So please do that if you would like to win. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Pat properly. And I want to just say that, I am a great admirer of Pat's in so many ways. And essentially, it's like we've actually only ever met online. Isn't that right, Pat? We've never
Yeah.
actually met in person. And yet it feels like we have, which is quite interesting. And I think that that's the energy that you bring in terms of listening, having listened to so many of your podcasts, having actually had the um, fortune of being on the podcast, of having chatted with you. I feel that we have met. And I feel that what is described about you in your documentary, Belief and Belonging, the word that was used time and time again is relatable. And that is something that I can definitely see. You're somebody who's incredibly relatable. And I think that is really the sort of what's so appealing and endearing about you to so many people. And also your ability to be vulnerable. You have this incredible comfort with your own vulnerability, to be comfortable with that. And that's a huge part of emotional resilience. I also think that we really need people like you in the world in terms of, especially for male mental health, having these role models, having men who can actually just show their emotion without it being seen as something that's weak or to fear or to be ashamed of. So, I am really, really delighted that you're here, Pat. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask you that question and then we'll get into the shadow a little bit more. But what is emotional resilience for you? What does it mean to you?
Um, to me, it's, I suppose, adaptability, flexibility, and being able to tap into a wide spectrum of emotion. So a younger version of me would have thought emotional resilience was be tough, be nitty gritty, be able to keep going. It was very kind of drill sergeant esque.
Hmm.
And so when I felt those things, I felt unstoppable, but I didn't always feel those things. So I didn't feel very resilient when I was anxious or I was insecure or I was depressed. Now, my new definition is I need to be able to feel as much as possible. So it's not about feeling good all the time. It's about, can I get good at feeling? Can I feel this wide spectrum that's there? Because as we'll talk about tonight, there's so much gold in the shadows.
Hmm.
And if I have to feel positive all the time and I have to feel the quote unquote good stuff all the time, it's negative in itself, because anytime you don't feel good, you think you're doing something wrong. So it's kind of a paradox there. So to me, it's how many of my emotions can I be with?
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important point, Pat, in terms of not being attached to, let's say, when we do feel positive, when we do feel those lighter, more sort of attractive emotions, that there isn't an attachment to them. And I've seen many clients over the years kind of struggle with that in terms of feeling better and enjoying it so much. And then when they have a challenge or they feel more anxious, then sort of questioning that and going, what's wrong? Why have I lost that feeling? And it's the striving for that feeling within itself that actually creates more of the anxiety that they're
Mm.
so desperately trying to get away from. So yeah, okay, so let's move into the shadow then, because this is what this evening's all about. And I'll just read some of the comments here. So yeah, maybe if you want to put in the chat, everybody here would like to share what it is they feel is emotional resilience to them, and we could read some of that. So Mel says it's been able to recognize my feelings, great, so negative and positive, and how they impact on me. So that's exactly what Pat was saying there. Lovely. Lee, yes, I think the tough it up and be positive attitude erodes emotional resilience. It really does, doesn't it? Because it's pressure as opposed to compassion. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Pat, maybe you could explain a little bit more then. Like, what is the shadow? Let's get a clear definition, if we can, of what the shadow is.
Okay, here we go. Strap in. um,
Buckle up, everyone.
Buckle up. We're about to go for it. Robert Holden, who's a great author, has a lovely way of putting it. And he says, the shadow is any part of myself I'm not willing to love. So any part of myself I'm not willing to love. So it might be certain traits, certain emotions, certain beliefs, certain thoughts, certain feelings and sensations within my body. So these parts of ourselves that we're not willing to love are oftentimes driven into the unconscious. So we try to hide these parts of ourselves. We try to suppress them, repress them. And it's parts of ourselves we're embarrassed of or ashamed of or feel are unlovable that we've pushed into the unconscious. We've hidden away from other people and sometimes hidden away from ourselves. So a way of thinking about it is when we come into the world, we develop a persona over time, and this is how we want to be seen. So I'll have certain characteristics that I show to my family, maybe other characteristics I show to my colleagues, other characteristics I show to the people I meet in the gym. And all of these different personalities or personas make up who I want to be seen as. And then anything that's not in that will go into shadow. So the parts of myself, again, I'm ashamed of, or I want to hide, or I want to repress. So the way I'll put it to people is the things I'm proud of ultimately will create the opposite. So if I'm proud of one thing, I'm probably ashamed of the opposite trait. If I'm proud of being kind, maybe I'm ashamed that sometimes I'm not kind. So maybe that goes into shadow. So hopefully that makes
Yeah, no, that's
some level of
lovely.
introduction.
And what was it, Pat, that drew you to this? Because I know you've done so much training and research in the area of the shadow. So what was it originally that kind of drew you to it?
It was necessity, as with most of what I do. It was funny. I was speaking in my old school yesterday. I was telling you, and I
Hmm.
was being introduced, and the principal said, "We're really proud of him. He's spent his life helping other people." And I said, "Truth be told, me helping other people has really been. I've had to go and do these things to help myself. Um, I had to help myself first, and I did it out of selfishness to some degree. And then I suppose when I got some goals that helped me, I wanted to pass it on. So same with the shadow work. I spent my 20s just relentlessly on this pursuit of achievement, and I achieved lots. I did lots of the things I thought would make me happy. But ultimately, I woke up at 28 and I bought the house and the car, and I had built the business, and I had great family, friends, and girlfriend. I had it all on paper in terms of what I thought I was supposed to want. And I just felt unsettled. I didn't feel good in myself. I struggled with anxiety. I was back going to psychologists and psychiatrists and all the different ists. And it's the Einstein thing, if you're repeatedly doing the same thing and expecting a different result, it's insanity. So I got to a point where it didn't make sense to keep chasing goals and keep chasing things outside of myself to
Hmm.
fulfill upon something that was happening internally. So I recognized that I had to go into my wounds. I had to go into my difficult parts and make peace with those rather than trying to acquire things externally with the belief that someday, if I get the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, magically all my insecurities are going to disappear. Because as we'll talk about, the further we run from the shadow, the bigger it gets and the more energy it generates. So again, for me, it was necessity. And it was seeing the power of it. You know, when you see a part of yourself you haven't seen before, and maybe you thought was wrong or bad or shameful, and you look at it with curiosity rather than judgment, and you see that maybe it carries a gift with it,
Hmm.
that's inspiring. You kind of reclaim a part of yourself. So the way I put it to people oftentimes is that if I have a friend who I only want to hang out with when they're in good form and they're
Hmm.
fun and they're motivated and they're inspired, but the second they feel sad or angry or agitated, I run a mile, I'm not a very good friend. But then for ourselves, back to that piece on, do I have to be positive all the time to like myself? That
Hmm.
was where I was at. So anytime I didn't feel positive, I didn't feel productive, I didn't feel inspiring, all these different things, I didn't
Hmm.
like myself. And I had to start to make peace with the parts of myself I didn't like, because I'll be with myself for the rest of my life. You'll be with
That's it.
yourself for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
And so, you
exactly.
can't outrun yourself, really.
No, that's so true. And it's interesting though, in terms of like, you were obviously someone, as you say, who was very goal orientated in an external sense. And where did that even come from before you got to the sort of deeper understanding of knowing that you needed to look more internally to get true peace, So where did that high achiever, where did he come from, do you think, in terms of how did that come about?
Yeah, so to give context, I suppose, for anyone who's watching that might be thinking about their own shadow, the origins of the shadow come in those first couple of years. We learn to be socialized by where we get approval or we get criticism. So when my dad or my mom approves of certain behaviors, there's a sense of, okay, I'm safe when I do that thing, and I'm loved when I do that thing. If I get the opposite, so if I get criticized for doing certain behaviors or having certain emotions, the opposite is true. So it's very black and white when we're kids, the first couple of years of our life. Things are good or they're bad, they're right or they're wrong. There's no context. And so my early years, I was bullied quite a bit in different schools that I went to. And so the belief was, I'm not good enough. That was a core belief for me.
Mhm.
And for a lot of us, we'll have that belief on some level. I think the two fundamental beliefs that most of our fears come back to are, I won't be loved or I'm not enough. And this
Mhm.
drives so much of our behavior. And so that insecurity I had as a kid carried into my teen years and then carried into my 20s. And, um, I had this belief that, okay, I don't believe in myself, but if enough other people come to believe in me, eventually I'll believe it. And so again, it was this idea that I'm broken in some way. There's something missing. There's something unlovable about me. But if I achieve, then maybe I'll be loved. And I think our society and our culture kind of sets us up for that in many ways, because we see people put on pedestals when they achieve, and overworking and being busy and being, yeah, an achiever is kind of, it's celebrated. It's an addiction in itself, but it's a celebrated addiction. Certain addictions we look,
Absolutely.
we look down on people that take drugs, or we don't look down on people that have gambling addictions, or we have pity. But then we have these people on pedestals saying, look how hard that person works, look how much they achieve, look how successful they are. So I think I fell into that. And again, more shadow material. There was parts of myself I didn't like being with. So when I slowed down in my 20s, suddenly my loneliness started to come to the surface, or my insecurity, or my self doubt, or um, my belief that I was a fraud or I was an imposter. All this stuff started to bubble to the surface when I got quiet with myself. And
Mhm.
so the solution was get back to being busy, and
Yeah.
achievement allowed me to, run from myself.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And again, it was just like an empty feeling no matter what you achieved. It wasn't going to give you that. It's funny what you say though about that sense of how it was perceived, and thankfully that the landscape is changing in terms of, that is something to be celebrated. There's kind of almost work hard and keep working harder. And myself and Kieran were just joking about that ad. Do you remember the Lemsip ad? And it was like this guy, it's really old. You're probably maybe you're too young, but it was like about 10 years old. And it was this guy working from home, right? Which was like very rare back then.
Yeah.
And he has a really bad flu, and it's like he's still working, right? And this was seen as like a really positive thing. And it goes, and he taps the lemsip. If anyone remembers this, he goes, sorts the men from the boys, right? And it was like, this is something to be celebrated, that he's pushing himself when he's ill, because he loves his work. So, or, he's so dedicated to his job. And I think
Yeah.
that is, nowadays, we were saying, I don't think you get away with that kind of advertisement, sorts the men from
Mm.
the boys, because it kind of shows the culture at the time. But yeah,
There was
I think,
something
yeah.
sorry, Fiona, just randomly, it's come to my mind, and it's really struck a chord with me recently. Maybe it'll resonate with some people. Nature has its natural cycles, right? So you got spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and there's times where seeds are sown, and then there's the harvest, and then there's things start to slow down in the autumn, and then everything goes quiet in the winter, and that's like the natural cycle. And one of my patterns that I recognize in this achiever mode is I'm always planting seeds. So I'm always doing the work, and I'm rarely,
Mm,
this is starting to change, thankfully, but I'm rarely,
mm,
really enjoying the fruits of my labor and taking a breath and saying I'm proud of what I've done, and then taking some time in the winter for reflection. And
mm.
that might resonate with some people. That again, it's the natural cycles of life. You need time to go into hibernation. You need time to start thinking about what's next, etc., etc. So, um,
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, because it's like you're just planting the next seeds, and even as they're growing, you're not actually stopping. It's like literally stopping to smell the roses and enjoy what you've already nurtured and planted. Yeah, absolutely. And I think
mm,
that it can be quite common for many people, actually. Um, Okay, so in terms of the shadow, then, like we spoke, you mentioned there just briefly the idea of putting someone on a pedestal. And I've heard you talking
mm.
about pedestals and pits. So maybe you could explain a little bit more about that, because I think it's really, really interesting, and also helps us to identify our shadow by looking at those two things.
Yeah. So, if I think about, where my shadow material surfaces in the world, one of the fastest ways of seeing your shadow material is in the projections you have toward other people. So in our early years, we start hiding parts of ourselves, but it's not just the quote unquote bad parts, it's also the good parts. So we call it the dark shadow and the gold shadow. So if I grow up in a house where my father thinks boys shouldn't dance, and I dance as a kid,
Mm,
maybe it's okay and it's kind of funny until you're 3 or 4, and then your dad's tired and he says, what are you doing dancing like a girl? And as a boy, you feel shamed. You feel love of your father, who's your main primary caregiver, maybe, is taken
mhm,
away, and you say, oh, you're not supposed to dance. And so that goes into shadow. Now, it's not just the dance that goes into shadow, it's maybe a lot of your creativity. So maybe 20 years later, you find you have a hard time expressing yourself creatively, hard time being in your feminine, hard time doing dance or art or music or any of these things. So there's a lot of parts of yourself that could potentially be lost in that. So that
mhm,
might be an example of golden shadow. That could be something that would really benefit you in life. And then the opposite maybe of dark shadow would be, I don't know, I noticed that when I get really angry and aggressive, people withdraw their love and they don't want to be around me. And so I decide you're not supposed to be angry or aggressive. So again, I hide that part of myself. Now, as I get older, worth noting, the point of shadow work is not to get rid of our shadow, but to integrate it so that we become whole beings, so that again, we can be with all parts of ourselves. It doesn't mean that I take my anger and I start displaying my anger all the time. It means I get closer to my anger, I come to understand it, and then I can choose when it's appropriate to demonstrate anger in a healthy way versus
mhm,
when it's inappropriate. So it's about reclaiming these parts. And again, we'll project our parts onto other people. So you mentioned the pedestal and the pit. When we put people on a pedestal, this is generally the golden shadow material. So it's the
mhm,
parts of myself that were shut down early.
mhm,
Maybe I grew up in a house where I was told you're not supposed to be the center of attention. It's a very Irish thing, keep your head down, do
mhm.
your thing, don't be too loud, don't be too out there,
Big for
don't
your
be too,
boots.
yeah, don't be too much. I think in Australia it's the tall poppy syndrome, they call it, that when the one
Okay.
poppy gets taller than the rest, they'll chop it down.
Yeah.
And so as I get older, let's say that creativity's been shut down, maybe I spend my life putting people on pedestals that are musicians, and I think they're incredible, they're just so amazing, and I see
Mhm,
them as being better than me in some way.
mhm,
When I point the finger, I'm pointing three back at myself. So I look at the people that I admire in life and I say, what is it about these people that I love? And maybe it's things like consistency and work ethic, and they're so social and they're so outgoing.
mm,
These are potentially parts of myself that I've lost along the way. And
mm,
so the invitation is that when I put people on pedestals, I reflect on what is it about those people And then I bring those traits back to myself and I ask, how can I live a little bit more in line with those things? Now, the
Yeah.
more difficult part to grasp is that when I look down on people and people trigger me and they upset me in life, they're also showing me parts of myself that I haven't made peace with.
Yeah.
So when I see people and I say they're so judgmental, they're so bitchy, they're so
Hmm.
inconsiderate, they're so rude, it can be very hard and it can be a sensitive topic to say,
Yeah.
well, maybe that's part of me as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I certainly
so
find that in
pedestal
my
victim.
work. Yeah, it's it can be hard to actually point that out to a person sometimes, but it needs to be said. You know, if they're really upset by somebody or they see a pattern of being triggered by certain types of people, really then it's about saying, well, look, is it possible, for example, if you find them so unreasonable, can you notice within yourself that you're unreasonable sometimes? And that takes a lot of courage and but it's the work that needs to be done. And in terms of the shadow, I do think it's one of the most important work that we can do in terms of our self development, in terms of self love, in terms of our ability to really connect, first of all, to ourselves, but to other people. So, have you noticed that, Pat, in your life in terms of, you know, as you look at, let's say, before shadow and after shadow?
Shadow
um,
never ends.
yeah, the shadow never ends, but let's say before you were conscious or aware of your shadow, and now that you've done all and continue to do this work, do you notice shifts within your own relationships in terms of, let's say, putting people on pedestals and in the pit? Have you noticed yourself moving away from that?
Oh yeah, everything's changed. This is the funny thing with sometimes the deeper inner work. Externally, not a lot looks like it's changed. You know, my life, I do the same things as I did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but everything internally feels different because as you make peace with parts of yourself, suddenly you see the whole world differently. Because as I come to understand my anger and I see people out there that look angry, I'm like, oh, I get it. Or you just find that compassion for self breeds compassion for others and vice versa. So it's like a cyclical thing.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, you still get triggered, you still get upset, you still get agitated, you still get stressed, you still want to point the finger, but you get a little bit quicker, I think, all the time at saying, wait a second, this is my work. This is not the other person's work. Because we can either go about our lives trying to get everyone around us to change for us to be happy, or we can change ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's the real work, I think.
Yeah. Michael Jackson's song springs to mind. If you want to make a change in the world, take a look in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
mirror. I mean, it's true though, isn't it? And it's what's I think is so empowering about it is that you are the one and only person who can actually make that change. So therefore, it's within your control. And that's what so many people who struggle with stress or anxiety feel, a lack of control. And yet, we have so much more control of what's truly important in terms of our thoughts, our behaviors, our ability to respond rather than to react. And once that learning, and it's such a skill, it is like that's what I'm saying in terms of it being one of the most important works you'll ever do. It's like an acrobat on a fine line. As you say, you're still going to feel like you might topple, but the awareness is what actually keeps you from falling. And sometimes you
mm.
will fall, but you're aware that at least that you've fallen and you can now start to get back up. And that's really the root of resilience, isn't it, Pat, in terms of the origins of it is bounce back ability, the ability to come back from challenges.
Yeah,
Um,
and self compassion, isn't it? It's, I mean, it's, we're
yeah,
not supposed to be perfect. Life would be pretty boring if we were perfect. Life would be pretty boring if no one ever triggered us. So can I read a
that's
quick
true.
quote? I've read this in my podcast, but I think it's
Please
pertinent
do.
if I can find
Yeah,
it.
lovely.
This quote I'm sitting with for the last few months now, and I think it's really powerful. It's just this idea that things outside of you that are problematic are not in the way, they're on the way. So it says your conflicts, all the difficult things, the problematic situations in your life are not chance or haphazard. They're actually yours. They're specifically yours, designed specifically for you by a part of you that loves you more than anything else. The part of you that loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. You're not going in the right direction unless there is something pricking you in the side telling you, look here, this way. That part of you loves you so much, it doesn't want you to lose the chance. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. It will make you suffer greatly if you don't listen. What else can it do? That is its purpose. That's from Almas. And my experience with my most difficult parts of my life, my anxiety, the anxiety I've experienced, I should say, the depressive episodes, the loneliness that's common for me, all of these parts that I feel like are happening to me are all pointing me back to wholeness. Like they're all just pointing back to the parts that I'm neglecting. The
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is telling me I'm taking on too much. The loneliness is telling me I'm isolating myself too much.
Mm-hmm.
The imposter syndrome is telling me I'm not practicing self compassion.
Mm.
So, again, there's a part of us somewhere there that knows and loves us so much that it's putting stuff in the way, if you can see it
Yeah.
that way.
I absolutely. And that can happen as well, can't it, on a physical level if we're suffering in some way, from an ailment or whether it's like, it could be a skin rash or it could be, something that keep cold sores or these, things that keep coming up. It's like they
Mm,
may seem so irritating, but they're really a message from the body, and that's the huge connection that the mind and body has. I'm going to read
mm.
you, if Kieran is my shadow here this evening behind the screen. So, Kieran, would you mind, sweetheart, just releasing the polls, and let's get an idea of some questions that I'd love to hear from the group here this evening of your own experience, because it'd be lovely to assess um, how you guys are doing. So I'll just read some of the chat as well. So Ray here says, never look up to anyone and never look down on anyone. Just look, see them as they are. If we look up or down, we tend to exaggerate their traits. Yeah, okay, so that's the pit and the pedestal, isn't it?
Mm,
Um, yeah, that's beautiful. I've also heard of like the idea of looking at if you go into a forest, for example, and you see the trees, you don't compare the trees. They're all just trees. And if we can look at people in that way, it's a really beneficial for all of us. So the
mm.
votes are coming in there, and there's a number of questions. And the first one is, do you feel there is a part of you that is sabotaging your progress? So this is again all related to this to the shadow. And 69 people here, 100% are saying yes. So we've got 100% people so far saying yes, they do. So that's really helpful to us as we progress here, so that we're getting a feel for what's going on for you. So a part of you.
I thought you were asking me that question, Fiona. I was like, yeah, there's a part of me that sabotages my, my life.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, you're welcome to answer it, Pat. Absolutely. Okay. So, do you feel divided? The next question in the polls is, do you feel divided by what you know you should do and what you end up doing? So, this is kind of like that idea of internal conflict. For example, getting more exercise, you might be thinking, okay, I need to go out for a run or something, establishing a regular meditation practice, but you end up scrolling your phone instead. And we've got 94% of you so far are saying yes. So that's very significant. And it's also very draining to have that kind of conflict within your mind. And what happens is it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you're hard on yourself for not doing it, for example, going out and getting the exercise, then you're more likely than not to do it again because you're already now depleted your energy from being hard on yourself. And believe me, people can be incredibly hard on themselves, as I'm sure you know, Pat.
Mm,
Um, so do you feel the need to suppress emotions in order to be accepted? And that's a big question, because it's really at the heart again of shadow work, isn't it? In terms of acceptance, and going back to what you were saying, Pat, about when we're children and how part of us sort of goes into that shadow unconsciously, not aware that it's happening, but it's coming from survival. It's coming from instinct in terms of, I need to be loved. I mean, that is our primal need, especially as children, to feel that belonging. So if there's part of us that we're suppressing, that is quite often linked back to those earlier years. So 44% of you are saying yes. So I'm glad to see 47% sometimes. Okay. Are you ashamed of feeling angry, sad, or lonely? 45% are saying yes. We've got 20% saying no. Okay, great. That's the direction we want to be going in. And sometimes are 35%. And then the last poll there, if you're probably just getting to it now, I'll read it out. Do you feel you hold back from realizing your full potential? And this is really the golden shadow, I think, Pat, isn't it? In terms of that part that and I felt it myself, and I've heard many clients express it over the years. It's like a kind of a niggle, that you're not quite reaching your own potential. And it can sort of like creep in, maybe lasting at night as you're going to sleep. And there's just something there that is saying, what happened to your dreams, or what happened to who you were going to be, or it's that loss of the golden shadow, or why aren't you laughing anymore? You used to laugh more, you used to enjoy yourself more. Where's that part of you gone? And I think
Yeah.
that happens to many, many adults. It's so, so common. I mean, I was only saying the other night, like, thinking back to college years or school, like literally, if you were to give me my timetable, I just had laughter at the top of it. Like that was number one on the agenda. That was it, just to have fun,
Yeah.
and that can start to go over the years, with, different responsibilities, etc. Okay, so that's really helpful for us to get an idea. So we're hearing 93% are saying yes, they do feel they're holding back from their full potential. So that's very helpful to us as we continue this evening. So what I thought we might do, Pa, is jump into some of the journaling exercises that you have, because I'd love people here to really engage in terms of a practical aspect, and what they can do this evening to really start to identify their own shadows.
Cool. Yeah. Maybe
Thank you.
just before I jump on that, I'm just going to
Yeah.
just to touch on, we talked about parts there. So there was is the language in this is fascinating. So there's a guy who, Dick Schwartz, who
Hmm.
came up with internal family systems. For
Hmm.
anyone not familiar, it's an amazing form of psychotherapy.
Hmm.
And Dick Schwartz noticed how many of his clients were coming to his office, and the language they were using was interesting. They would say, "There's a part of me that keeps messing up. There's a part of me that can't seem to stop drinking. There's a part of me that hates my mum." Um, all these different parts. And he said, interesting, there's a part of you. What about the other parts of you?
Hmm.
And this can be an interesting thing to play with. So for the people that are saying maybe they struggle to stay consistent, I would argue that there's a part of you that struggles to stay consistent. You probably consistently brush your teeth, bring your kids to school. There's lots of places you do stay consistent.
Hmm.
But his whole model is based on this idea that, again, as kids, we go through experiences that are a little bit overwhelming. We've all had different overwhelming experiences that were a lot to take. So the example I use is when I was 4, I went to school for the first time and I was bullied and I was excluded. And for a child, that's overwhelming. And so the body experiences emotions. You're not supposed to show emotions as a boy. And so I shut down the emotions and I went to my head. And my head tried to come up with ways of keeping me safe in the future. So there was lots of different ways I could do that. I could become the tough guy. I could become the funny guy. I could isolate myself. And I came up with all these strategies unconsciously, ways of saying, I don't want to experience this again. So my mind goes into survival mode. How do I ensure I don't experience that difficult situation? And this could happen throughout our lives. Maybe I go through a breakup. I feel I have my heart broken because someone cheats on me. And again, maybe my survival strategy in that case is to not get into another serious relationship, go out with emotionally unavailable people because I know they're unlikely to commit and it's not going to get to that place. So we form all these defense mechanisms, but it's interesting just to recognize what is the part of me that's self-sabotaging in a certain area, and then try to explore where did that part form. So the part of me that struggles to connect with people, I ask, where did that form? And it formed in my early years. So that's that one part. Why did that part form? It formed because I was bullied. Okay, so that makes sense. So it really helped me. And again, this
Hmm.
is shadow material. I'm saying, okay, this is something I didn't like about myself. But as I start to get curious and I start to look at it, I recognize it wasn't trying to sabotage me. It wasn't trying to get in the way. It just came up with a strategy of keeping me safe. That really doesn't serve me anymore. So I can thank it for that. And then I could say, it'll still emerge. I'll still have that part emerge. There's this, Pat, you don't fit in. But I say, no, that's the 4-year-old in me. I just need to give myself
Hmm.
a couple of deep breaths and step in. So just a few bits
Yeah,
there.
that's really important, Pat. It's the understanding is what you're talking about there. The sort of the deeper level of knowing the origins of it is what allows you then to release it. Otherwise, it can feel like you're kind of banging your head off a wall without that understanding. And I think it is very significant. It makes such a difference when somebody makes that insight. And it's like
Mm,
a light goes on, and then like the golden shadow then is given permission to emerge. Like, so that's why I
mm,
always get defensive, or that's why I always get so afraid, for example, when I get close to a person, or whatever the situation is. So yeah, I think that's very helpful. And it does require that, it's like Niall Breslin wrote the forward for my book, and he talks about the scenic route in terms of having to put the effort in. So whatever it is we're
Mm,
doing in terms of learning about ourselves, there are no shortcuts. So that level of care and attention and insight into ourselves is so valuable. It's not to say that it's easy. It doesn't fall out of the sky. It requires those more in-depth explorations, like what you're talking about. So that
mhm,
connection that you've made, and then you're free to let it go. And as you say, then you're able to actually recognize it. It's not completely gone, but you're able to recognize it, breathe into it, and proceed regardless. And that's, that it no longer serves you, as you say. So that's really, really important. Um, okay, so will we jump into the journaling then? Do you feel ready
yeah.
to do that? Yeah,
Oh,
brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
I'm
Great.
going to do this as well.
I am going to as just a comment in the chat box there, it's harder to deal with when the shadow comes in an impulse. So this is one of the ways that we can start to recognize our shadow material. So the things that where I notice myself acting impulsively or compulsively, or I notice myself reacting in disproportionately emotional ways, my first step is to say, oh, that's interesting. And I need to keep curiosity with all this stuff rather than judgment. So I don't say, I shouldn't be that way. I say, I wonder why I am that way.
Mm.
So we start there, and awareness is the first step. From awareness, we can change. But as we get into these journaling exercises, the big encouragement is to be curious and be gentle. If you were to, as Fiona said, there's no shortcuts, but one, I don't know what
Are
to
you
call
going to
it.
give a shortcut now?
Yeah, my shortcut, if I could do it all again, a couple of things. There's that quote that I read earlier that says that everything that's getting seemingly in the way is there for us. It's a challenge, and if we're willing to take on the challenge, we're going to reclaim some gold through that. So that's number one. Number two is bring curiosity to everything in your life. Everything we do, everything we think, in every way we act, it's all for, like, on some level, we're trying to support ourselves. The person who drinks too much, there's a reason you do it. Maybe it's to stop yourself from feeling difficult emotions. So that makes sense. I get curious about it. I ask myself, is there healthier ways of doing that? Anyway, I could talk all day. We'll get into the journaling exercise. On a scale of 1 to 10, just let us know in the chat box energetically how you're feeling this evening. Are you 10 through the roof? Are you 1 through the floor? Are you somewhere in between? Just to check in with yourself. So take a breath, see how you're feeling. And there's no right or wrong answers. It's just feedback.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So 2 or 3 is not bad. It just means you're a little bit tired.
Mel is a
1 to 10.
6. That's good to hear. Deirdre 4. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1, 8, 5, 5, 7, 7, 12. We
Okay,
got a
somebody's
12.
a 12. Wow, this is awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
6. Okay.
Great stuff, guys. Thank you for the engagement. So here's what we're going to do. A couple of prompts. We're going to talk about values and shadow values, and mission statements and shadow mission statements. And this starts to take into account a lot of the things that we've talked about. So a couple of simple exercises. So if you've got pen and paper, definitely jot this stuff down. If you can use the chat box as well, I would love to hear what comes up for you, if you're comfortable with that. So we're going to do a couple of questions. Thanks for all the numbers, lots of numbers coming through.
Sorry to hear about the family pet passed away there, Kay. Sorry to hear about that. That's tough.
Okay, here's what I'm going to share with you guys. I remember years ago being at a retreat, and the guy running the retreat asked a lady, what would you love to do for work? Because she didn't like her job. And her response was, I don't know. And he quickly said to her, I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would you love to do for work? And she answered perfectly exactly what she wanted to do. And it was interesting to me in what was happening there was she did know, her heart knew, but her head was coming up with reasons that it wasn't possible. So we very quickly go from knowing to thinking too much. Like, this part of us knows all the time. Our heart knows all the time, but we can quickly go to the head because we doubt ourselves. So with these questions, they're short, simple questions. Just write down what comes to you first. So the first question is, the thing that I needed the most before my teen years that I didn't get was, the thing that I needed the most before my teen years that I didn't get was. and just whatever words come to you, word or words. So I might say attention, I might say love, I might say approval, I might say support. So the thing I needed the most that I didn't receive in my preteen years was, we'll just take a couple of seconds. Again, don't overthink, just whatever comes to you. Go gentle. Next question is similar. During my teens, the thing I needed the most that I didn't get was maybe connection. So a couple of words coming through in the chat box. I see love, praise, love and kindness, approval. Non-family love and approval, confidence, love and acceptance, approval. Thank you for the shares, guys. So again, the first question was preteen. The second question is teen. The third question then is since my teens. So the thing I needed the most but didn't receive since my teens was, so I see encouragement coming through. I see communication coming through, care and attention. So the second question was the thing I needed the most during my teens that I didn't receive was. The first was preteens, and the third one was since my teens. I see safety, I see confidence, I see self-love, I see understanding, I see praise, support, and attention. It can be a little bit sensitive to touch these topics. So again, go gentle with yourself. Acceptance, I see. My experience has been a willingness to look at these parts, the parts that we felt were missing or lacking. These can be the roots of some of our wounds, and the wounds can be the thing that drive us to try to do everything and make everyone love us and make everyone like us. So again, they can drive a lot of our behaviors rather than looking directly. So appreciate you looking directly at these. I see support and attention, self-acceptance, family support, confidence, time from loved ones, guidance. Thank you, guys. Okay, next question, a little bit different here. Some of the traits that I admire the most in others are, So you're going to have a collection of words as we go through this. Some of the things I love the most or inspire the most by others are. Some of the things I'm inspired by others, some of the parts of other people that I'm inspired the most by are their compassion, their kindness, their work ethic, I see confidence coming through, their happiness, their organization, the fact that they're carefree. So just jotting all these words down in your journal. Hopefully we're going to have a list of at least, 8 to 10 by the end. I see confidence coming through a lot. Compassion, the time to listen. Confidence, carefree. Confidence, quite confident. Confidence is a big one. Their humor, creativity, being able to make jokes and banter easily. Kindness, carefree, work ethic. Great, guys. Thank you all. Okay. Again, hopefully you're getting these on paper. Clarity, I like that one. Clarity of purpose, calmness, sense of self. The next question, when I'm at my best, I am. When I'm at my best, I'm calling these questions, really, they're what we call a sentence stem. So we start the sentence and again, whatever comes to you first. So without having to go to the head, what comes to you? When I'm at my best, I am. I see comfortable, I see energy, I see security, calmness and clarity. Comfortable in my own skin, lovely. I'm not letting others think, not letting others' thoughts on me make any. I'm in flow, I'm free of self-expression, in the flow, content, great stuff. Decision making, geez, the chat box is hopping tonight. Confidence.
It's lovely.
Okay, guys.
Happy within, yeah.
And now for the last question on this for now. Imagine it's 10 years from now. We're at an event, and the event is to celebrate you. Yeah, so we're at an event to celebrate you. Maybe it's a big birthday, maybe it's an award ceremony of some kind. And a family member is going to get up and speak and give a speech about you. So is a friend, and so is someone from the wider community. So a family member, a friend, and someone from the wider community. What types of words would you like to hear in this speech? So if someone was giving a speech about me, I'd like them to say, Pat's a kind man, he's generous, he's vulnerable, he's playful, he's authentic. What would be the words for you? So again, a couple of different angles you can look at. What would a close family member or loved one say? What would a friend or someone from maybe your workplace say?
And so you're endearing, Pat. You're endearing.
Sexy. I'm giving myself that one.
How does endearing translate to sexy? I'm not.
I tell myself what I need to hear. Committed, thoughtful, true to self, generous, fun, and trustworthy, playful, kind, and open-minded, caring and supportive, diligent, fun. Okay. Lots of words coming through. Brilliant. Non-judgmental, loyal. Great. Just have a scan of your words on paper. Let me know in the chat box how many words have you got. Roughly. Doesn't need to be exact.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we have a few.
Just really fun.
How many of you, Fiona?
I have three or four here.
That'll do. That'll do. Okay, 5 and 7, 14. Fair play. Now, the next one, wow, 21, 3,
Mm.
6, 6. Next one, I'm going to push you a little bit. Maybe this might be a little bit funkier, a little bit different. But as you look at your list, I want you to just tune in to the different words and you're going to try and narrow it down to 3. But the way I want you to do it is not from the head. I want you to read through and I want you to try and tune into your body a little bit. And that might sound um, a little bit out there for some people, but just notice. And if you got stuck on any of the questions, don't worry. This is not about the specific questions, just about getting as many words down as we can. Go through the words and try to highlight 3. What 3 words stand out the most for you? What 3 words? We got someone saying they're completely stuck, 0 words. So if you think about 3 people you admire and think about some of the traits in those people, that's probably the easiest way of starting. So 3 people you admire, and what is it about those people that you admire?
Mm. Irene, I've run out of paper. I'm kidding. That's good to hear.
Yeah, that's a good prompt from Lee as well. If you weren't stuck, what would the words be?
Oh,
So again,
brilliantly clever.
on the ball. Okay,
Yeah.
some great words coming through. So energetic, funny, and kind, confident, calm, and authentic, kind, hardworking, and fun, connection, gratefulness, and playfulness, self-love, confidence, and happiness, compassion, generous, and fun. So some of these can point to a little bit of golden shadow material. These could be
Hmm.
parts of ourselves that we have somewhat integrated and we allow ourselves to experience sometimes, but maybe we don't see ourselves fully in the expression of these traits. So
Hmm.
what we're going to try and do, we're a little bit tight on time, so you may have to continue on with this after this session,
Hmm.
but we're going to come up with a mission statement. So mission statement is who we are and what we do. So who we are and what we do. So I'll give you my mission statement. My mission statement is that I create an authentic and connected world by allowing the space for myself and others to live with playfulness, acceptance, and curiosity. Okay, so I create a connected and authentic world by allowing the space for myself and others to live with curiosity, acceptance, and playfulness. So the way you're going to do this, I create a world of, and then put in your 3 words that you've come up with. So, for example, I see some of them here. I create a world of self acceptance, love, and self belief. So, write down, I create a world of, and your 3 words, and then by. How do you do it? I see Ashling here. I create a world of curiosity, creativity, and adventure by, and then think about what are some of the actions that would allow you to create this world. So again, we're thinking the world that we create inside of here, we will project out there. Does that make
Hmm.
sense, Fiona?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, and I think it's so clever to make it actionable, in terms
Mm,
of this is what I want and how I do it, because that creates that process of moving forward. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting because what you notice is that so many of the words are being repeated in terms of what you value in others and what you want to be remembered for. So you start to see that is the golden shadow coming out. It's like that's the part within yourself that you also really feel you want to be seen as, or maybe you, you
mm.
you want to be remembered in that way. I think mission
Um,
statements are really powerful. I think we all need to have a mission statement. And I love the way, Pat, like you just know yours so well. Like that's inspiring because it's there. You're not having to read it like I am off my phone because I haven't learned it yet. I did a new one recently. So I think it's like bringing it to your day, like the way that you have it there just automatically at the tip of your tongue is something that everyone here can do.
I have some of my, this is not my statement, but I just have some of my values tied to my computer, compassionate, authentic, and playful,
Yes,
because I want to remind myself because who we are is
exactly.
more important than what we do.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's so true. And having that there, I think that's a really good tip for people is like somewhere you see it every day. It can be on your phone, you can save it to your phone, screenshot, you can have it on your computer, but somewhere that you're actually really seeing it often and then learning it like that. So it's there, it's accessible, and are you actually living by it? That's where the action comes in. So yeah, absolutely. So we are getting very short of time. This always happens, but there it is. That's part of the wonder and joy of this work. So what I would love to do, Pat, and everyone here, is we're just going to take 5 minutes or so, and I want to bring it all together for you through a hypnotherapy. And then what we'll do is we'll just, if you want to stay on for an extra 10 minutes or so, we'll look at some of the questions. And if you're happy, Pat, we'll answer maybe three of those questions. And then we will let you and your shadows go into the world, and enjoy the rest of your evening. But for now, if everyone here just take a moment and acknowledge the work that you've done in terms of that journaling, acknowledge the sharing. And what's lovely about the chat is that by sharing that, you're actually becoming more accountable to yourself and to everyone by putting it into words and sharing it. So thank you for that. And that takes courage, and really just acknowledge that. So we're going to close our eyes together. And I want you to imagine some music, because I can't put music in a headset together. So let's just imagine some kind of peaceful sounds using the power of your imagination. And I want you to know just how powerful your imagination is, that your subconscious mind, it does not know the difference between reality and imagination. So we're going to dig deep this evening towards parts of you that really require and deserve your love and your attention. So let's just take a full deep breath and then a slow, long exhale. We're going to do that again. And the next time we do it, I want you to just simply open your eyes. So let's inhale. Now open your eyes, hold the breath, and just look upwards. And I want you to look up as high as you can, past your own eyelashes and your own eyebrows as you exhale, and keep your eyes open. So just keep looking up. And as you keep looking up, you'll notice that there's a desire to return perhaps within, that maybe, just maybe, what you seek is already within you. So in a moment, I'll count to three and we'll all close our eyes. And when we do, not yet, but when I count to three, on the count of three and not before, you're going to bring all of your attention, every single iota of your attention, down towards your heart, like you're going to land in this soft, sacred space that is your heart. Keep looking up. Notice the eyes getting tired, wanting to go within. I'm counting to three. One, two, and three. And we're just closing our eyes now, and just allow everything to start to fall and drift down. And I want you to imagine that you're just landing in the softest, most beautiful, warm place. Feel yourself landing there. Breathe. Rest. Imagine that this space is infinite and has the capacity to hold every part of you, that it is endless, that it is a place without judgment or pressure, and that you are safe in this place. And just imagine that because you are giving yourself permission, if you choose to do so, to feel a little bit more relaxed, to feel a little bit more comfortable, just imagine that you start to allow yourself to drop a little bit further. And you lie down in this soft, comfortable place. And as you lie down, your body releases. You give yourself permission to surrender. And as you lie down, you can just imagine and pretend that you start to drift into a gentle little sleep. You're not asleep, but you can imagine and you can pretend that you're sleeping. And when you sleep, you can dream. So let's imagine you're dreaming. And as you imagine you're dreaming, I want you to imagine that you're walking through a beautiful forest. You are alone, but you don't feel alone. Because as you walk, you see your own shadow that is cast on the floor of the forest. through a gap in the trees above you. It's a beautiful day, and the light just seems to pass through the tops of the trees, and your shadow is there. And it occurs to you that who are you without your shadow? That by seeing your shadow, you know that you are alive. You know that you are whole and complete. In fact, you know that you exist by simply allowing yourself to notice your shadow. The shadow may seem dark, but yet it is so comforting to know that it is there, that you're not alone. And what's so interesting is that whatever way you go, whichever path you choose, your shadow is sure to come. So let's imagine and pretend again as you're drifting deeper that you decide to sit down and you sit on a beautiful trunk of a tree. And as you sit down, you notice that your shadow also sits down and you smile to yourself because you know that you are never alone. And you notice then that something spectacular emerges, that whatever way the light is shining through the tops of the trees, through the leaves, it seems to just touch your shadow and it illuminates it into this golden light. So your shadow is now golden, and you feel this warmth and this connection. And all the parts of you, all those words that you've shared here this evening, the calmness, the confidence, the self love, the compassion, the joy, the laughter, the fun, all of those start to feel so tangible, so real. And at the same time, you notice that the darker parts of you, the parts that can feel fearful, anxious, sad, doubtful, overwhelmed, stressed, that those parts are nothing to fear, and that without the light, you cannot have the dark, and without the dark, you cannot have the light, that both support each other. So it is like the perfect matrimony. It's like this relationship, connection, a feeling of integration, of wholeness, of knowing that deep, deep down within you, that no matter what comes your way, you have everything within you already inside, safe and secure, that you are loved and you belong just as you are right now. So, whatever emotion is there, just allow it to really soak in, to resonate, almost like you're immersing yourself in that feeling of connection, of wholeness. And as you know now, your imagination doesn't know the difference between reality and what you imagine. So you can allow yourself to bring that feeling out into the world. You can bring the light and the dark with you as you journey through the rest of your very, very precious life. So I'm going to count upwards from 1 to 3. And on the count of 3 and not before, all of our eyes will open as we come back into this community. So for 1, a nice deep breath, allowing those feelings to come with you. And that's the skill of bringing them through. So whatever is internal, we are now bringing to the external. For 2, and you're relaxed, but you're becoming more alert, which is a great place to be. You're feeling relaxed and alert. You're going to sleep beautifully tonight as we rise to 3, and our eyes softly and gently open. And there we are. So, thank you everyone for following with me. I truly hope that you enjoyed that. So what we will do is let's have a little look at the questions and see what has been upvoted um, the most. Let's have a little look.
Just let me really quick, Fiona, if I can.
Yeah, sorry, Pat seems to be gone there. Maybe he's lost in the forest. I've lost him in the forest. Can you see Pat, anyone? Just let me know in the chat. I don't see Pat. Oh, I'm so pleased the lovely messages coming in. You're so welcome, Irene, Caroline. You're so welcome. So just Pat seems to have gone. Kieran, you might he's frozen. Okay, thank you, Brenda. I'm not alone there. Okay. So he's gone. I think I must have what did I do to him at all in the hypnotherapy? I don't know. Oh God, his shadow went into some kind of frozen state. Hopefully he'll pop back on. He's coming back now, I think, waiting for Pat to reconnect. So stay with me, everyone, because we would like to answer some of these questions for you. Um, I'm thinking of that ad. He's frozen. Oh God. Celine says, powerful webinar. Thank you so much. Yes, you lost Pat in the forest. Yes, I did. My God, Pat, I'm all alone. I'm not alone. I'm with my shadow. I'm never alone. Isn't that right? He's coming back. He's coming back. I can see. He's just taking a bit of time. Um, it means you will have to invite him. I like your style, Brian. I like your style. He says, I will have to invite him to another webinar. You're dead right. Stay with us a couple of moments. Hopefully, he's going to come back on and he can answer some of your questions. That was a beautiful meditation, Fiona. Oh, thank you. Didn't want it to end. I know, neither did I, but I thought, my goodness, God knows what time it is. Gronya, how are you? Thank you for being here. Gronya is such a lovely person, full of golden shadow, Gronya. Thank you, Fiona and Pat. You're so welcome. So let's see, is Pat coming back up? He's accepting and connecting to the webinar. I could stay here all nightly. Yeah, well, I think we might be actually. I think we might we might be settling in. Oh, Deirdre, I'm so glad you joined as well. There was amazing content. I could listen to Pat all night as well. He's just so incredibly inspiring. And I'm so grateful to him for coming on and to all of you. You're just amazing. Thank you, Irene. That's a lovely thing to say. Wonderful meditation. I'm so pleased. Yes, yeah, I really am. Well, it's coming from everything that we've worked on. You know, that's the magic. It's like everything that you're giving me, I can then give back, and that's what I love about this work. So Charlene says, thanks, guys. That was just what I needed. I've struggled with past few months with giving time and energy to my well-being. So hopefully this will be a kickstart. I hope so, Charlene. Absolutely. Fair play to you for coming this evening, and please do let it be so. Um, okay, I'm just going to check. He's accepted and connecting. There's obviously some kind of issue with him. Um, Fiona, do you do a podcast? I know Pat's is flipping awesome. It is. Well, that is something that might be coming down the line at some point, but not quite yet. But it is something I would love to do. So thank you for asking. I think it would be great. Kim says, great work. Love the shadow work, the reconnection to self and values, coming home to self. Good visualization. Oh, I'm glad, Kim. Thank you so much, everyone. Um, Pat Divilly is sending me a message here. Let's just have a little look and see what he says. Okay, sorry, connection dropped. So sorry. Okay. Well, look, not to worry. I just want to, I'll finish up then myself and just say that the second in the series is going to be on Wednesday, the 8th of December. So webinar number 2, I'll have a brand new guest. Be hard to follow, Pat, but there we go. We'll do a whole new session on Wednesday, the 8th of December. And that will be, I'll announce it through my Instagram and my blog that you can join as well. I want to thank Kieran, who's been working behind the scenes on this all day as well. And he's here this evening. So thank you for all that you do, Kieran. And yeah, I think that is really it. In terms of the questions, what we might do is because I really don't want to leave them completely unresolved for you. And I think Pat is the best person. I'm sure I can answer some of them, but I would love to get Pat's input as well. So what I might do is send them to him, and then I can maybe share them on Instagram or through my blog as well, and just send him maybe three of the ones that I would have selected this evening. So I'm so sorry that he popped away. Whatever happened in that hypnotherapy, poor old Pat's shadow went off. So listen, everyone, it's just been such a joy. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to everyone who donated. I'm so grateful. You can still donate if you haven't already. You're very welcome to do so. If not, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that you're here, that you're doing the work, that you've turned up, and that is what is really important. So thank you for all your comments. Thanks everybody, and I'm going to sign off and give my own little shadow a nice cup of tea or maybe some hot chocolate. Anyway, lots of love and thank you for being here this evening. Bye bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.